Um, okay. Hi guys. My name is Abby Hahn, and I am a first year Masters of Recreation and Youth Development major. And in this group conversation, we will be discussing chapter 4.
I'm
Awesome.
uh I'm Hayden Schott. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm Hayden Schott. I'm a grad student getting a certificate in ag leadership. I transferred in from a different undergrad, but now I'm here.
Wait, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
You're good. Okay. Hey, my name is Emily. I'm in my second year master's program here in the Agriculture Leadership Education Communications program. I did my undergrad at Texas State in animal science, and then I took a gap year. And during that gap year, I worked with 4-H Capital. So I was an animal science instructor to these different elementary schools in Austin. And currently I have a focus on youth development with my degree. So what about me?
Hey guys, my name is Alyssa. I'm also a first year Master of Recreation and Youth Development degree major. Yes.
Hello guys, my name is David Bailey. I'm also a first year and I'm getting my grad certificate in agriculture also. I guess I'm first time really being in Texas. I said I'm originally from Maryland. So can't wait to get started.
Ooh.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So in chapter 4, we were able to read the 8 different effective features of positive developmental settings for youth programs. So within this discussion, we get to just talk about each of those 8 features separately. But our ultimate goal as youth serving professionals are to integrate all of these features to create a positive developing program. So the first feature that we get to talk about today is the physical and psychological safety feature of this.
Sweet. So I did want to point out a few things that I found interesting about this topic was that I highlighted this and it says that um, I have it highlighted where it says adults in charge of youth need to be more than just the mouth of importance of safety. They also need to take that extra step to instill practices. So you don't just want to be like, okay, like these are the safety guidelines, but you actually want to implement them. You want to make sure that they're still following them throughout the program because kids will forget things super easily. Like you say something, unless they don't see it and unless you don't repeat it, it's gonna go in the ear out the other.
One thing that like really resonates with me on this is like, and from experience that I've seen is like, if when we have those guidelines of like this is a safe and like we need to like make sure we follow these things so the program is like following all these guidelines for a safe environment for kids. A lot of times like the people in those positions can take like a super like non upfront approach and be very like unemotional with kids and sometimes like that like gives off that standoffish approach to kids and they kind of don't reciprocate like that feeling of feeling like safe and welcome in those environments. So I feel like sometimes it can be like hit or miss and it has to be like based on the situation so like kids feel more welcomed and feel like the adults are being like very genuine in those situations and very like welcomed in like a genuine form.
One of the quotes that I had read from this chapter says the presence or absence of caring relationships affects whether an adolescent thrives or has problems. So that like key factor in itself is really important just as um, an adult that gets to be in charge and leading kids in programming. It's important to note how impactful that relationship can be, either in a positive or a negative way. So making sure that they are safe and that the adults that they are surrounded by are there with good intent instead of bad intent is super important too. And I think that that's why like safety precautions of programs are super important, involving background checks, like super in-depth interviews, just to make sure that the protection of the kids is focused on.
I like that you mentioned like the physical like aspect of the safety. One thing too that I didn't really consider too much was the psychological safety too. Here it talks about like there's experience of violence and harassment in schools. Y'all kids are mean. So you want to make sure you have like this environment where you kind of nip it at the butt whenever like a kid starts to be a little bit too much. So I've had it before when there was this one kid that you could tell the whole group was kind of just like honing in on him. And so like what I ended up doing was just like I sat everybody down, just like, hey, like we're all a team here, right? You guys know what team is? Like you what's the saying? Like you are your you're as strong as your weakest link. And so I told him that because like everyone was just like holding on him. But it goes to show that like if you want to also feel psychologically safe, you know. And here it mentions that like if you don't have that, there might be an increase in like skipping school. Like I don't want to go to school and being bullied, people making fun of me, or you're just gonna have a more negative aspect going to school. Like say you're in this youth program and everybody's like, you know, picking on you. You're like, I don't want to go here anymore, kind of thing. So I think that was really good that they pointed that out, kind of brought into perspective that it's not just physical but also psychological too.
The next element of the 8 features includes appropriate structure. So that basically discusses the importance of clear boundaries and rules as soon as youth enter a program. An example that I specifically have of that has been working at camp with kids, or even like youth serving programs in the Bryan College Station area. And the most important thing that we do, whether that's at the beginning week or the beginning of the week at camp, or the very beginning of the program, we set rules and expectations for those kids to make sure that they understand, hey, we're going to be respectful, we're going to follow instructions, we are going to listen to whoever's in charge, which is the adult in that situation, just to make sure that there is isn't like unnecessary like chaos and craziness. And I've seen that in implementation, and also seen just a lot of benefit from that. So kids know like, hey, these are the boundaries, and we set them up so that you can be safe, and we're also going to keep others safe with that as well.
I mean, yeah, my mother worked for a nonprofit for the past like 13 years, and I would always hear stories. I was an after school program, and I think that when I think of structure, I think of making sure that that structure is relayed clearly. Um, I know it talks about control. And I think the only way to have effective control is if that structure is relayed clearly. Because I know when people get mad at you for something that you don't even know what you did or why it went wrong, that's where problems get caused a lot. So I think the idea of having clear and consistent rules as opposed to being disorganized can stop a lot of the problems before they even happen.
Also, well, I have a personal experience with this also with appropriate structure. Actually, last year when I was coaching in Colorado, I coached a flag football team, and the first thing I know that as being a coach, the first thing our standard was to treat others the way you want to be treated, and I know that really helped out a lot of the kids. I feel like because before the years before, it was a lot of bad behavior on the team. I feel like it wasn't a good leader for a coach. It was a bunch of younger guys. So when we came in there and we set that standard, I feel like guys, the kids really got to listen to each other, understand each kid more just from that simple rule right there.
One thing too I want to add. So whenever I was working with 4-H Capital over there in Austin, at one of these elementary schools, they had recess time. So we get the kids, they're eating their snacks, and then we go to recess or outside time, and then we start our class. It got to where at the playground, like there's different after school groups, so there's a lot of kids. But there's more behavioral issues that were kind of occurring during the recess time. And so me and my teaching partner were like, we asked like advice from one of our leaders, and they said like try doing like a structured play. And so what we did was we ended up doing like different activities. It was still very much physical. We were still outside, but we did things like what's it called? People to people. We did like kind of like we would do at like camp and such. And we found that that was very beneficial. They really enjoyed that for one. And two, it kind of brought our relationship to them much stronger. So instead of just watching them play, you know, like we were also engaged in participating in that activity that they were doing too. I think that also like it not only helps them kind of like, you know, like refocus and like kind of have something to do, but it also increases the relationship an adult has with the youth. So
Absolutely.
And that I like, go ahead. Something that I also like think of when I think of like structure is like developmentally structured, like making sure that it's structured in a way that's appropriate for like certain age groups or like even physical like categories that they're in. So like I worked for an environmental education program in the spring, and so we taught a different age range of grades and like ages, and so we had to make sure that like our stuff was our educational materials and activities that we were doing were structured to that individual group and age range and what they were like fit to do, just because if we structured our program around third graders and it was really meant for eighth graders, then that's not like being a good structure like for them. Like we're already setting them up for a bad experience. And so like when I think of structure is making sure that like it's set up correctly, and like you're doing the research and like making sure that it's developmentally sound for certain age groups.
Absolutely. The next feature of the 8 is supportive relationships. So one thing that I thought was really interesting to see in the readings was that when coaches focus more on like developmental skills rather than winning in a sport, it oftentimes builds self-esteem and lowers anxiety. And that was just really interesting to read on like, hey, okay, the focus could be more so like basic life skills as well as like the specialized skill in that specific sport, but it also comes alongside that kid to say like, hey, you have a trusted adult that is here to support you, not just like in this sport but also in life, to make sure that you're growing up and doing well.
Yeah, I can give a quick note about this. I know our on the baseball team here at A&M, our coach's big philosophy is we play to a standard, not a scoreboard. And that makes me think of this because focusing on developmental skills, whether that's actual on-field skills or skills of becoming a better person, as opposed to winning in the score of whatever the sport may be, um, that has a lot more to do with confidence and self-esteem than winning does. That teaches people and specifically the youth about whether that be respect, integrity, loyalty, whatever those values may be, finding a way to develop those as opposed to just develop the desire to win, I think is a different and more effective thing.
nice. Whenever I think of supportive relationships, I kind of go back to when I was in fourth grade. I used to go to Saturday school, by choice, by the way. Did not have to go, but I wanted to. But I had this Miss Johnson. She was like my main teacher, but I was really sucking at math. I could not do long division to save my life, and so she told me, she's like, you know what? How about this? Just come to Saturday school. Like we'll just spend extra time on that. And it was only a few Saturdays where like I I was able to do long division, but she was so supportive that she made me not hate math. I'm not good at it still, but she made me like not see it as such like this horrible thing. And it kind of ties back to like having like that warmness. And I will say I do remember calling I actually you ever called like your teacher mom or something like that before? I did that with her, but we just had such a strong connection. And like even when I was in Texas State, I remember emailing her and I was like, hey, I just want to say like you still have an impact on me. Like I still talk to you. I talk about you like with people because, you know, having that very supportive relationship with an adult as a youth is so impactful. Like I'm still remembering her today. I'm talking about her today right now when this was like years ago. So like it's when you have a really good mentor, they make an impact on you for a very long time.
Awesome. The next talking point that we can cover are the opportunities to belong, which just basically means having a sense of inclusion within programs to make sure that everyone that is there is welcomed in.
Yeah, I think it can be like a touchy topic, especially to talk about now, but like as we're evolving with different youth development programs, um, especially like ones where we have large capacities of numbers, like camps and educational programs and sporting programs that we also perform, just like making sure that it's just a standard that like everybody's welcome, doesn't matter like who you are, where you come from, or anything like that, that everyone feels welcome. It's not even like a question. Anything to add, anybody?
Do we want to? Why don't we? Yeah, I'll ask this question. Um, how do you think we can create a sense of inclusion and belonging in a program, but also be aware that youth can also feel alone even when they aren't physically alone? Like they might be emotionally and mentally feel like they're not a part of the program. Like how can we make them feel like yes, you belong here. Like this is your seat.
Absolutely. This was something that we got to talk about in our youth development class that we have on Mondays. And one of the things that we were able to recognize within class discussion was that even when youth are surrounded by a bunch of people, they still might feel alone. That's the same while also like having a phone and having social media. Like the idea of being alone is still like possible, like that feeling for literally anyone, no matter what they might be involved in, whether they're like physically isolated or not. And so I think just making sure that like conversation amongst everyone is spurred, whether that's like icebreaker questions at the beginning of a program, just different like group interactive activities that could be like created so everyone feels involved and included in the things that they're doing. I think that that in a lot of ways can take away that sense of self-isolation that they might be feeling.
I say I can also speak on the like example of that. Basically, when I was at Colorado on the football team, we actually had someone on our team that was bisexual on there, and that was for the first time ever really in, I guess, really program history, whatever, this and that. And I know when he used to come to the locker room, you can just really tell he felt he was just by himself. It seemed like all the guys wasn't really around him. But one thing that personally myself and a lot of the other guys did, we just basically went over there just to talk to him, just on certain things every day. We take steps by steps, asking him to chill, just making him feel like he's a belong of the team, letting him know he's a belong of the team. He's one of us. So I feel like one thing is really just doing is just reaching out, touching. I mean, well, just really talking to someone, just Just let them know that you're really there for them, that you're part of the team, and it really don't matter what you are. I say once you're in the locker room, I say we always won.
That's awesome.
True. Yeah, that's a great example. Cool. The next feature is positive social norms. So that basically means that group culture can shape behavior in this feature.
I can
I
go
think this
first.
is, yeah, go ahead. You got
You
it, Hayden.
sure? Thanks, Alyssa.
Yeah, you're
Um,
good.
I I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, at least from reading this, is the idea of a group culture and how peer-to-peer leading and motivating is a lot more effective than having someone higher up have to force that on you. And having a positive social set of social norms creates a culture, which culture always breeds the values that are spit out by whatever community that is. Um, and so if there's a community full of people who like to defy people of authority or defy each other, whatever it may be, that's going to spread like wildfire. So I think the idea of having positive social norms that are enforced not just by uh, people of authority, but also peer to peer is probably just as important, if not more important, than people of authority.
Yeah. I think like going off of that, like when I like read that and thought of it, I kind of like associate like lead by example with that as well. Whether it be with young kids younger than you or people the same age of you. Like if you make it like a practice to like this is how I'm gonna interact in this social setting, like doesn't matter if I necessarily feel like it at that moment. But putting those behaviors out there and like the way that you hold yourself and interact with other students and other like peers of your own age, that really is like setting the tone in that environment, whether it leads outside of those doors or not. They know that like in this environment, like this is what's acceptable and this is like the standard that we hold ourselves to. And they're gonna put that and like take that, especially like young kids, they're so like influenced by the people that are older than them and people that are leading them. So like they're gonna take that like, hey, this is how she talks to her friend, and this is how she talks to her peer. So they're gonna take that and like run with it. So like making sure that you set those right off the bat, because if they see like 1 inch, like, oh, you talk to them in a rude way, even in just that one moment where you're upset, they're gonna take it to, hey, I'm upset right now. This is socially acceptable for me to talk to you this way.
I agree. I feel like that combines with the appropriate structure, the positive social norms, because just like you were saying, like being a good example to kids is super important. I know that um this past spring, my group for one of our youth development classes went and volunteered at the Lincoln Center to put on a program for the after school students. And it was really hard to get the older students involved because they just were like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. The motivation just like wasn't there for them to interact in the activities that we had created. And so the peer like interactions are super important in the way that your program just like ends up going, whether that's positively or negatively. It's a lot easier, I would say, to engage kids. You make things fun and exciting, and then they're like, I'm in this, I got it. Whereas older kids, you really have to like know and understand one, their background, but also like where they're at in life. And I think that that also just connects with that opportunity to belong, to like have that oneness and make sure that the people that are surrounding each other within this program are like connected and being kind to one another. The next feature that we can discuss is support for efficacy and mattering. So one of the questions that we have is how can we create greater autonomy for youth in programs? So that basically just means that they're able to express their input in decision making, but also like are challenged within youth programs.
I know one thing I did so I taught 3rd to 5th graders, but for one semester I had 1st and 2nd graders. And so there's a lot of scaling down with my lesson plans. But at the beginning of the class, I would ask them like, how are you guys feeling? How was, and then we would kind of have like reflection questions, like how was last week's lesson? Was it too hard? Was it too easy? Like, what do you guys? Because I told them like, at the end of the day, like this is for you guys. Like I'm here for y'all. Like you guys want to learn about animals? Like let's do it. What animals do you guys want to learn? So I gave that. I essentially gave the ball to them. Like here, I have the knowledge to teach you all this. Tell me, what do you want to know? And the kids really liked that because they're like, oh, I want to learn about like, they were really into dinosaurs and sea creatures. So I had to like do a lot of research on that and make some activities related to that. But they were able to put in their input, and it actually really made a huge difference of them like truly enjoying like that class. Like I had the kids saying like, oh, I always get so like, I'm gonna miss next week. I'm going somewhere. I'm so sad. It's like, oh, we'll miss you, but we'll keep you in mind. So that was really, really nice.
Something that I have like when I think of this from like experience working with challenge courses, so we would do a bunch of group development and team bonding exercises, that could range anything from, as little as 3rd grade all the way up to geriatrics, and we're doing the same exact activities, same exact platform, same exact everything, for those age ranges, and like they can do it. Doesn't matter how old they are. They can do the same physical activities and get through that exercise, maybe with a couple modifications for their age. But that wasn't necessarily the challenge. Is when you talk about debriefing and how to relate this to life, how to relate this to the situation that you're in, that's really like where breaking it down and like making it understandable in the chunk that's appropriate for their age. And then they can give you that feedback. Like you're asking them certain questions. You're essentially asking the same questions as you would for anybody else that's an adult. But they can break it down for you in a way that they understand. And it's like really amazing to see because they're giving you the same feedback, whether it be, like this is how I relate this activity to how I can like prosper in life and how I can overcome hard situations. And so that's really cool. It's because they're expressing their input maybe just in more creative ways, that like their brains work different. So they can go pick up a pine cone and be able to express to you that a lot easier than like just throwing a question at them. So that's something cool.
That's awesome. The next feature is opportunities for skill building. So we want to see how youth programs can combine basic skills as well as like the specific skill that they're trying to teach to create positive development.
I can talk about this one for a second. This brings me back so I grew up in California, and when I turned like 16 or 17, my dad had always been a part of the board for it was like a youth surfing program where we taught underprivileged kids, brought them to the beach, brought surfboards, and like taught them how to surf. And it was an awesome program that I'm just thinking about it now. Like, I guess the focus skill we were teaching was surfing because it's a pretty like, I don't know, it's a pretty unique thing, but it's a very focused, unique skill. But the basic life skills I'm thinking of, like the it was way bigger than surfing or anything they were doing. It was about coming to the beach and doing something that they never thought that they could do, and they were able to do it with pretty much very much ease, and we had people there to help them, and I think the idea of striving to be able to do something that is a little bigger than you thought you could is that life skill built into that focus skill.
Yeah, similar to like what, go ahead, David.
I'll say you can talk a few more. I'll say one thing I was just going to input on that is really just as I was reading the question, how can programs incorporate the base life skills alongside with the more focused skills? I was going to say really just um doing things as a group. I would say going out doing activities as a group. I say one thing that you really see with a lot of teams, just a lot of people really just outside of like the sports, say when you go take a field trip or just go somewhere and just really get to know each other more. I feel like that really incorporates the basic life skills into the real focus skills. So I say example, I would say with like paintballing, when you went out, we went out as a team, we went paintballing as a team. It really taught us really just to really care about each other, really have to work together. And I felt and that was before the football season. And that really took onto the football field to really say, really, I don't really know how to explain it. It just really, it helped us really care about each other, like off the field. I would say it helped us with that football season to really care on the field and off the field.
Did you have anything to add to that, Alyssa?
We're good.
Okay, cool. Awesome. The final feature that we get to talk about in this conversation is the integration of family, school, and community efforts. So something that I thought was interesting to read about was just like the impact that family has showing up for their kids in whatever they're involved in, and how that can help express the support that's given to these kids, but also they've seen in research that it's helped these kids perform better and just have like greater motivation to do the things that they're involved in. And then a part of this, we can kind of study how school programs can combine with community programs, because we've seen once they unify together, that a lot can be done for the families that are being served. And so I think like specifically something that like I have seen is a program that I worked for over the summer. It's called Mentoring Alliance. They partner with schools in the Tyler area, and it's also a summer camp program. So they put on after school, summer camp, and mentorship. With that, they have been able to partner with the Tyler ISD schools to make sure that summer slide isn't happening. They involve Tyler teachers in different like academic periods they have throughout the summer camp day. So you have this community focused program, but also meeting the school need. And that in turn is helping these kids grow and like stay on track to the expectations that school is having for them to like be at.
Sweet. I wanted to I really like this topic because it's something that's a very like a research interest of mine. Because family showing up to what you do or participate, it means a lot. Like it'll stick with you. So one of the elementary schools I was working at, the site coordinator or like the leader of like kind of who oversees the whole program, she was very much involved with the families, very good at communicating, sending out flyers, letting them know like, hey, like 4-H, they're having their youth stock program or their was it the youth stock show, where they show their boer goats. And so she was very active with the community, and everybody knew what 4-H was. That school was very well known for their after school program. There was wait lists for the after school program. However, so I worked there whenever she was the site coordinator, and then I did one of my classes. I wrote paper about the school, but there was a new site coordinator, and I went to go see, and there was definitely a huge difference in like the relationship with the family and the after school programming. So they do like spring shows at the end, and the year where the new site coordinator was, there wasn't that many participation among the family. And I really, really do agree that like families bringing that community, especially with families with like the youth program, it means a lot to the kids. Like you can see them, you really, really do see them. So that was one thing that I noticed, and I was like, yeah, like how can we get families more involved? And you know, I did a lot of reading about how like there's a lot of different factors as to why it's hard for parents, work, money, all that stuff. But I want to do much more research on that and see if we can kind of shorten that gap a bit more.
You guys said it well. Good.
Yeah, I think it's cool. So, I mean, if you think back to your own like experience, like when I was involved in a lot of stuff when I was a kid, like my parents were always like working, so it was just, and I was always a busy kid. I always like participating in a lot of things after school, but I didn't really come a lot to my things. It wasn't until like I played ultimate frisbee at Texas State, and for my last year they came to my game. It was like the first time like they ever came to anything, and it meant a lot. But I think it's really important, especially at a young age, to like have that have your parents there, see what you can do and get them involved so they can also see like, oh, it's not okay, I'm proud of you. So.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Like I played a bunch of sports growing up through middle school and high school, and like I can count on one hand the amount of times that my parents were able to come to a game for many sports. And like obviously, like your parents love you, but at a young age, if that was still the case, like you're just like, yeah, I know my parents love me, but how come everybody else's parents are there? And it does like it makes like it can have an impact on not only like your actual involvement with that sport, but like also like your emotional side of like playing, like while my parents aren't able to be here like everybody else's are.
Do y'all have anything else to add? No?
Good.
That was good. That was fun.
Awesome. Well, that was a great group discussion, and I am going to stop the recording.